What does poker have to do with Everyday Ancestral? Well, stay tuned because you're about to find out. Welcome back to Everyday Ancestral. I'm your host, James Berry. My next guest is a former chef turned professional poker player, and he won the 2014 World Championship. How incredible is that? We delve into the championship, the traits that poker playing embodies that tap into our ancestral characteristics, the things that help keep us alive ancestrally. They show up in poker players. So stay tuned. This is a fascinating episode with Martin Jacobson. What a lot of people don't know about you is that you are a former chef. So how does a former chef turn professional poker player? Walk us through that journey.
Well, it was kind of like right place at the right time, I suppose. And things just like sort of happened that way. I was actually in between two jobs. So I got a job offer to move to Barcelona and work at a Michelin star restaurant down there. And this was, very early in my chef career, and I had quite high ambitions. So I didn't take long to accept that offer. But then I quit my job in Stockholm at the time. And during that period, the overlap period, my contact there went totally MIA. I just couldn't get a hold of her. I don't know if I imagine, I've obviously thought a lot about this, like what happened. But I would imagine that the job wasn't there, and she was too embarrassed or felt too bad to to spill the news, so she just chose to ghost me instead.
Ghosted you? What people
Yeah.
say now, ghost? He ghosted you.
Yeah, yeah. Um, so it was during that period that I was already playing poker, as a hobby in parallel or on my off time when I wasn't cooking. And it was during that period that I started devoting more time towards poker, and it sort of became more professional about it, I suppose. But then one thing led to another, and I had some very fortunate early success, and then that sort of allowed me to never look back and just completely pursue a career as a professional poker player.
Getting offered a job, though, in a Michelin restaurant, I mean, that's no small beans. Like, that's not everyone gets that opportunity. So when you left for Spain, did you actually land in Spain and then have no job?
No, no, I didn't go
Okay.
that far. Yeah. So I was like the opportunity cost for me back then was quite low. So the way I viewed it, transitioning to poker now, the way I viewed it was that if poker obviously didn't work out, I could always go back to cooking. So knowing that I didn't drop out of college like a lot of my peers have done, putting all the eggs in one basket and just going all in, no pun intended, that on poker. And I feel like I had more of a safety net because I had a very clear skill, and like I was fully educated at the time. I had a good network. So I knew I could always get a job in the restaurant industry if I needed to again.
What kind of chef were you? Were you savory or sweet?
Savory. So I was junior sous chef. That was like the highest I ranked.
And did you have like a specialty that you particularly felt like you excelled at?
A specialty dish, you mean?
Well,
Or
dish or like, oh, I loved, I'm the sauce guy or I was the griller, any aspect of the kitchen that, well, as a sous chef, you're doing more than just one thing, but was there one that you really like, oh, this is my sweet spot?
yeah, I was usually on. God, I forgot even the term now. But you have the grill, you have the pastry chef, who does like
The garde
starter.
manger or something? Were you
Yeah,
doing
yeah,
that?
exactly. Yeah, yeah, the Gardy. Yeah, yeah. So I was in charge of all the sauces and um, like um, all the, uh, Doug, I'm thinking back in Swedish now because this was at the time where I was living in
Yeah,
Sweden.
where you
So
were
like,
exclusive. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
yeah. So yeah,
This brings up actually a good point, though, because this was going to be one of my questions. Is since you kind of moved away from cooking and being a chef, and you really in many ways went all in with poker, right? So have you lost some of those chef skills? Because it is very much one of those things like, well, I should preface, like, it's you always will know how to cook, but I mean working in the intensity of a kitchen, a restaurant kitchen, that is a skill. That is something you can lose. The speed, the kind of high intensity, being calm in that high intensity environment, those are skills you can lose if you're not in it all the time.
Yes, true. But I mean, it's not like I've been like what I went into instead is I would say arguably more stressful than working as a chef, even though I think working in a kitchen is one of the most stressful environments you can be in. But yeah, I mean uh, a lot of those skills and sort of work environments are very frequent in poker as well. Like you're constantly under a lot of pressure, a lot of stress. You have to make decisions within seconds, which is very similar to working in a kitchen, that where the bar is set high and you have a lot of expectations and everything needs to happen as quickly as possible because you're working with such slim margins, like you can't waste anything like time, uh, resources, produce, like everything has to be spent very efficiently. So I think learning that at an early age has sort of helped me in poker as well. Also, like staying calm under pressure in like high pressure spots.
Hey, YouTube fam. 80% of you watching aren't subscribed. If you're digging these episodes and haven't hit that button yet, now's the time. Every sub helps us grow, land bigger guests, and keep the good stuff coming. So hit subscribe and stay curious. One of the reasons why I wanted to interview you on this podcast is because I see the qualities that it takes to be a professional poker player as ones that are ancestral. And if you can indulge that thought, what would you say are the qualities of being a professional poker player? And you've already just touched on them, but maybe elaborate even more so on them.
Yeah. Yeah, being able to endure and sort of thrive in high pressure situations, I would say is like one of the key aspects because you need to be able to like stay cool under pressure. You can't just freak out and because then your decision making goes out the window and you start acting from a more emotional aspect than rational. Like you always want to be rational in your decision making. Um, so being able to differentiate between emotions and rationality is very important, I would say. Obviously, like being patient and um, yeah, discipline is very key as well.
Is there also a lot of stillness? Like, because I imagine when you're playing poker, at least from the little I've watched from shows and when I'm in Vegas or something like that, I noticed the professional players, not the so it's fascinating because there's such a clear difference, right, between someone who just casually plays and someone who's professional. And what I observe is in the professional players, they're more still. Their body is kind of more contained. How would you classify the difference between a casual poker player visually and a professional player visually?
Yeah, I think the main difference is probably discipline. As a professional poker player, you have to be disciplined, otherwise you're just never gonna make it. And a part of being disciplined is having that stillness that you're referring to, being cool under pressure, um, taking one decision at a time, not looking ahead, not looking back, just like trying to operate from a rational uh, standpoint rather than getting emotional over outcomes that you can't control. So that's another thing leading into that you have to be able to separate and be okay with making decisions with uncertain outcomes, and that's something that's extremely challenging as a human being because we're so dependent on the outcomes in our decision making, and we have so much bias towards if a decision was the right one or the wrong one, depending on the outcome. But in a lot of what poker teaches you is that you just want to focus on making good decisions. Like the outcome is sort of irrelevant. Obviously, it matters and can have a huge outcome on the outcome of the game or even your life, but you just sort of have to separate yourself from that.
So walk me through, because I think I'm even realizing right now that I even am assuming that I know what poker is, but what is poker to you? And I don't just mean, you've already embodied what, how you show up and you play poker, but what is the actual game? What is the poker game? How is that different versus other card games?
Yeah, to me, I guess it's like it's competition at a very, very high level with really high stakes, and it's sort of you're sort of playing in an equilibrium, right? So it's like you have your strategy, I have mine, and then we clash. And then it's like whoever has the best strategy comes up out on top. So because it's a zero sum game, one of us is going to win and one of us is going to lose. So the bigger mistakes you make, the bigger I benefit and vice versa. So that's why it's so important to always make sure that you have some sort of edge on your opponent because otherwise you're playing in a losing game. So it's like when you show up to Vegas and you play blackjack, you're never going to have an edge over the casino. So like that's the difference. Like people like to compare poker and blackjack, but to me they're so totally different because I would never play blackjack because I know it's a losing game. Whereas in poker, I would only play games where I think I'm a winner. Otherwise I'm just playing for fun and I know I'm not beating that game. But my main objective is always playing in games where I think I have an edge.
So how do you get an edge in poker? Is it like researching who you're playing against? Is it just mindset? Like, what is an edge?
An edge, so it's very complex and fundamental game. So nowadays, the studying to figure out how to play the game looks a lot different than what it did back when I was young. So I started off reading books, reading magazines, watching poker on TV, and then sort of figuring out my own strategy from there. Maybe like reading on forums and discussing like with my early friends, what different strategies and whatnot. Nowadays, the game has evolved tremendously, and we basically you study the game using AI and something called solvers, and it's an AI that's sort of plays itself until in equilibrium to figure out the best strategy that's impossible to exploit, meaning that neither of the two components can have an edge, and then you can see both outputs, so you know exactly which hands to raise, which hands to fold, how often. So poker is a lot about frequencies as well. So it's not just about which hands to play. It's like how often do you play them. So it's extremely complex, but that's what makes it fun because for a human being, it's basically impossible to completely solve the game and playing a non-exploitable strategy, meaning that you play strategy where no one can have an edge.
Well, you're making me think though that AI is kind of like poker's version of steroids for, athletes or something. Like, you know what I mean? Almost like where it's changing the nature of the game.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, it's changed huge. Like it's a complete different game today than when I started playing. Because back then, when I started playing and we were reading books as a resource to get better at the game, it was like a lot of it was just trial and error, right? It was like my strategy versus their strategy, and then we'll see who come out on top. And it's like you see different trends and stuff. Like people are doing different things and testing things out, and some are more successful than others. But the bar was so low back then that you can get away with not being very good and still make a lot of money. Whereas today, you really have to study these outputs because people are starting to play more and more like the computer. So you have to play closer to the baseline of what we call game theory optimal, which is the computerized strategy which decides how many hands you can play and from which positions.
Oh my, this is crazy. I didn't even know this was happening, but it makes sense that people would utilize AI to do this. are you even finding yourself pushed out of it, or are you now converting, and shifting your mindset to fit this new way of playing?
Yeah, you have to. Totally. I mean, otherwise you'll fall behind. So I've been using these resources for close to 10 years now. But it's constantly evolving. There's always new software coming out which you can train, and uh, different aspects of the game. Like you can drill pre-flop, you can drill final tables, you can drill multi-way pots. Like the game tree is so huge that it's so hard to memorize and learn everything. So the key really is to utilize AI in a way where uh, you study it, but you try to develop your own framework. So you try to see patterns. Okay, the computer likes to play this way in with these combinations. So you try to like bucket a lot of hand classes rather than looking at, okay, how do I play this specific spot? But it's totally like
Interesting.
I totally agree that it's kind of like poker's form of steroids, and it's actually sadly being used like that because there's a lot of cheating going on nowadays online. So a lot of the poker sites are constantly advancing their counter software to detect cheating when it's going on, and people are utilizing these softwares in real time, which is obviously illegal.
I recently was talking to this older gentleman who's a jujitsu master, really. Like he's very experienced, been doing it for a long time. And we got in a conversation about it, and he said, "Well, I'm not bigger and stronger than a lot of the other guys doing jujitsu in this room." He said, "But what I do is I understand the strategy and the techniques. And so I just wait until they make a mistake and then I got them. But I'm not stronger than, so I'm not going to muscle past this, but I can just wait for the mistake." So in a sense, is that because if everyone's using this technique of AI and they're really trying to think like a computer, are you basically, when you're playing them, are you just waiting for their humanness to make the mistake?
Yeah, sort of. There's a little bit of similarities there, I would say, especially at the higher stakes where the fields are much smaller, and the fields are also more polarized, meaning that there's the very, very elite players that are very well studied and will play very close to optimal. And then you have the wealthy businessmen recreational pool of players that are playing very far from optimal and have a lot of flaws. So you can sort of say that in a sense the professionals there, they're not looking to battle versus each other. I mean, of course they will, but they realize that that's not where they're making their money. They're making the money of waiting in these games for the amateurs to make a mistake, and then they can profit from that.
Let's go back to 2014. You're in the World Series of Poker, their main event, and you win. I mean, this is huge, right? I mean, this is be beyond probably what you had ever experienced in your life. I mean, that first of all, didn't you win something like $10 million? Was that more money than you had ever seen in your life at the time?
Yeah, definitely.
What would take us back to that? Like, what was that like? First of all, I'm imagining like you're in that last game, and so you're almost like you can almost see and feel the 10 million,
Yeah.
and yet you can't reveal that, right? You have to stay very calm and focused. So, can you share kind of like viscerally what that experience was like, and then of course winning?
Yeah. No, it was, I mean, obviously crazy experience and the definitely the pinnacle of my poker career. Winning the World Series of main event is like the number one goal of every professional poker player or any poker player really. But it's one that's not really reasonable, attainable. Like even if you play it every every year for the rest of your life, like for you to even final table it, you would be a very big underdog to do so. So to actually final table it in my sixth try and go all the way and winning it, especially coming back as a short stack, was, still to this day, I don't think is really um, it's really hit me yet. Uh, Weirdly enough, even like 10 years later.
And so was there I'm sure there's just this elation of like, and dumbfoundedness of like what just happened. But then I have to imagine like, "Oh, no, where do I go from here?" Right? 'Cause you reached the pinnacle in a sense towards what everyone's hoping to do. So, what was the next moment like for you?
Yeah. So people winning usually have like a different strategy. Like some people continue playing, some just get out of poker because they realize, okay, well, I've made a bunch of money and that was my goal. But for me, um, I've never been into poker because of the money, and I think that's helped me tremendously of making decisions because I haven't made a decision from a financial motive or standpoint. I've just try to play my game and play poker out of a um, from a point of passion and love of the game. So knowing that heading in and after winning, I didn't see any reason to hang up the gloves or and move on because I still love the game, and now I felt like, okay, I'm on top of the world in poker, and I almost felt like a responsibility to now be this ambassador for the game and this spokesperson for poker that was gonna widen it to a wider audience and do all these media obligations that people expect that you do, especially since I was a professional player as well. And I'd already had some success, on the European tour. Nothing to this level, but I had some big scores. So the money was uh massive, like much bigger than anything I ever won before, but it wasn't, I wouldn't say it was completely life changing. So what I did was I just continued playing and never really took a break. Actually, like went to a new tournament just a couple of months later, and then just continue playing from there. Looking back at it, though, I wish I hadn't. I wish I had taken some more time to properly digest and ask some tougher questions of like, what is it that motivates me now? Now, once I've reached this huge milestone, because it's post the win, it was definitely something that I struggled with. Um, I could feel that I wasn't as motivated to study or to play. I didn't enjoy it as much because I knew the feeling of winning wasn't as good as I imagined it to be. It was great, don't get me wrong, but like I did feel like I didn't get to enjoy it because I just couldn't like wrap my head around what happened. And then, all the exposure and everything that comes from it. It was great, but it was also quite overwhelming for me. So knowing that and like what am I playing for now? If I were to win again, would it be twice as nice or would it be less nice because I've already done it? And it's also not really like I said, it's not really a reasonable expectation to ever even final table the main event again. So like why am I doing like what am I doing this for? And is it time to move on?
It's almost like an identity crisis, right? I mean, yeah, where do I go from here, you know? So what did you land on? Because I know you definitely, um, have gone, further with it. So please share where are you going now with your poker playing, but even beyond poker?
Yeah, the identity is also a huge thing, Giving up, I was only 6 years into my poker career at the time, but it's still 6 years, and then before that, I was a chef, so, like, what else would I do? Like, those are the 2 things I know. So, when you don't have something new lined up or a new clear path, I think it's very easy and comfortable to just continue what you already know, and, you have all your friends, you know people, um I was, considered myself like very good at what I did. So it would make sense to continue playing. But deep down in me, I still felt like a conflict where I knew I wasn't as motivated as I was before. So I wish I would have taken more time off and just properly digest and maybe explored other things.
Yeah,
Um,
how do you think now that you've had, like, 10 or 11 years of space from winning that, and we were talking about, well, one of the skills of poker playing is stillness, right? So how how does stillness show up in your life now? Like, are you able just to be with yourself, your thoughts? I mean, you're a new father as well, so I imagine there's a lot of newness going on right now, but how 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 are you how does stillness show up in your life now?
God, yeah, there's not much stillness right now, to be honest with you. Uh, so the way everything sort of worked out is that I've kept playing poker post the win, and my motivation has gone up and down since, and I've had successes after, and um, you know, long periods of really hard times as well. So that sort of like refueled my motivation to come back and, prove to myself that I still have what it takes to win in an extremely competitive game. But now I'm at a point where I'm definitely looking at what like life after poker, what's next, because I feel like definitely want to do I want to do more outside of the game. Like I'm very grateful of everything that poker's given me and the platform and all the success and the financial freedom of having choices that I otherwise wouldn't have. Um, so in, alongside my poker career, I've started angel investing, which is something I really enjoy because I see a lot of similarities to poker there, but it's, the main difference is that investing is not a zero sum game. Like everyone can actually win. So that's what I like about it, that you're building something that's real. Like you're really building businesses that provide value for people. And that's something that really motivates me.
What kind of investments are you finding yourself attracted to?
Uh, so far, I've mostly been drawn to consumer market. I love the consumer sector, I think, because there's a lot of psychology involved, with a physical product that you sell directly to consumer or customers. And I love to dissect brands and think about them from a deeper level of like what makes some companies work and others don't, like what makes them stand out. What is it? Like, is it the branding? Is it the customer service? Is their sales channels? All those aspects I love to think about and sort of evaluate. So that's something that I'm more drawn to rather than B2B SaaS products.
Are you finding yourself gravitating towards food products because you were in restaurant or no?
No, it sort of had the opposite effect. When I was very young, I always dreamt of starting a restaurant, and then as soon as I started working in restaurants and I saw the owners and all the stress that they were experiencing, I realized quite quickly that that's not who I want to be.
Yeah, let's share a little bit about that because I talk a lot about it. Sometimes I say how, to me, cooks or chefs, in the restaurant business are like pirates, are modern day pirates because they're living these crazy lives. They're up really late at night. A lot of them are chain smoking. They're on their feet all day. Like in many ways, they might be. Now I know not every restaurant is a healthy restaurant, but they might be espousing making food that is to nourish people, but they are the ones that are not nourished in any way. So can you talk a little bit about that world?
Yeah, no, I can totally relate to that. I think it's like a young man's game as well. So like it was a lot of fun when you were in your young 20s, but thinking now to go back to that environment, does not sound very appealing to me. I do miss the team
Particularly
aspect
now that you
though.
have a kid.
Yeah, exactly. When am I ever gonna sleep? Um, but no, I do miss some aspects of it, like coming in, working through the list, prepping everything, doors open, service, working as a team, problem solving, cleaning up the kitchen, sharing a beer and talking some shit, and then, go home and then do it all over the following day. That aspect I miss. But as a whole, yeah, I totally agree. It's like one of the hardest professions you can have, in my opinion.
It's sort of strange because you can work in a kitchen and feel like you're part of a team because you're all in the kitchen. But when you're doing your job, depending on the kitchen, but most kitchens, you're very isolated. You're quiet. You're not necessarily sh- talking when you're working. You're all working towards the same goal, but you're independently doing your job. And it's only afterwards or before work starts or after work that you really get to be a part of the community. Is that kinda how poker playing is as well? Because I'm connecting those dots right now that poker must be a very isolated, career as well.
Totally, yeah. I've actually never made that connection, but yeah, you're totally right. And that's probably what draw me to both careers actually, because I'm a quite an introvert as a person. But I also like the social aspects, but like in moderation. And especially when I'm focused, I don't like to talk to people. I just like to focus on what I'm doing. And then we can talk about it after. Um, but yeah, it's definitely a strong parallel there. And poker can be extremely lonely, because we're all, even though I have lots of friends, like we're all competing against each other essentially. And there's no friends at the poker table, and you're only as good as your last result. And it's like each one for themselves. And since it is a zero sum game, it's very competitive. So you just kind of have to have that mentality. But there's other ways to like build community and, share ups and downs, and you can, swap action or sell action to lower some of the pressure and the variance
Is
involved.
the poker community such I think of the parallel of, like, politics, where so even after you've played and you guys are, let's say, hanging out together, that you're still protective of your process, just like a politician might not wanna reveal all their cards, internal cards. I have to imagine that that's probably how you guys are with each other as well, right? Because you don't wanna reveal too much of your process, because then they could use that against you next time they play you, right?
Yeah. No, there's not much of that, to be honest with you. Because each this was so rare that the same exact situation is going to occur, especially versus the same person. And nowadays, most of the big games, they're live streamed anyway with commentators and whole cards up, and everything is like very face up these days. So everyone has a good idea of how everyone plays anyway. But usually, like after the day ends and we hang out, we don't really talk about poker anyway.
What do you guys talk about? Do you just go
Every
to everything else, or are
anything
poker
else,
players
yeah.
secretly into, like, lumberjacking or something?
Mostly sports. So
Oh,
we
okay.
cool down by watching sports. Yeah, there's a lot
That's
of
funny.
betting going on as well.
So there's so many skills that we've talked about that poker and even chefing embody, but I know you created like a program for people to support people in learning poker, to understanding these traits. So how do you for the people listening or watching this podcast, what are a few things that people could do to get comfortable with their stillness in your opinion? Or what are some things that you do to support these traits in yourself?
Mm, yeah, I think the main thing is to, like I said, like try to operate from a place of rationale and not from emotion. So do not like try to separate the two. I think that's key. and also like thinking long term, not short term. Um, I think as humans, we're sort of drawn to both thinking, both making decisions from a emotional standpoint, but in a place, but also like thinking long term or thinking short term rather than long term. So we just want to like fix the symptoms, rather than thinking, okay, well, but also focusing on your decision making process rather than the outcome. That's, I think, the main one.
which really all apply to so much more than just poker, right? I mean, I could easily apply what you just said to like eating nutrition and exercise. Um, what about though? You talked about like, okay, you won this event and then you had some struggles, you had some up and downs. So how did you deal with the downs? How did you deal with when you were not feeling your best? Like what did you do to kind of help climb out of those holes?
Yeah, that's the toughest aspect of of what I do. Uh, but what I did was I tried to devote even more time to studying and to take breaks. So having something to look forward to out that aren't poker related, like I stuck to my routine, uh, exercising every day before I play, eating nutritious food, getting enough sleep, meditating, all those things sort of like hit the reset button every time I play. I know some guys that are just playing and then they go on a bad run and they wake up the next day and they just fire up more games. I can never do that. I need to have a reset and stick to my routine, and then I'm good to go again, like regardless of what happened the previous day. But that's sort of pre ritual. My pre-game ritual is very important to me, very key, and it's something that I've like always stuck to.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So how is being a new dad and having a child, how is that affecting routine for you? Because clearly this is your first time being a father, so you have no you have no routine. You're figuring it out.
Yeah. It's a game changer for sure. It's it's cool because it kind of forces you to be more flexible and realize that like you just got to do things whenever there's free time and you get a window, and yeah, you have to be a bit more flexible in your rigidness and not expect that everything's going to happen exactly when you want it, because all of a sudden there's a curveball and you know he's not sleeping that night, or you know
Yeah. You gotta just be present with it all. But in many ways, I mean, when you're playing poker, how much of it is that presence? I mean, because at one point you can have as much strategy as you want, but you just have to be present with where you are in the game, right?
Yeah, totally.
Which is
You have
just
to be
like life.
Yeah, exactly. You have to be flexible at the poker table too, because you never know what's going to happen, and there's plenty of curveballs there as well. Like the first your first hand, you might be looking down at pocket aces and think, "Oh shoot, I'm going to win this tournament," and then you get it in versus pocket kings, and you're out. The very first hand, like that could happen, or you lose your half of your stack the first hand. So there's a lot of things that can happen that are totally unexpected and out of your control. So just being okay with that, I think, is a good starting point.
All right, so my family and I we have a deck of cards on our table, our dinner table. We find it really it keeps us at the table longer, and it kind of inspires more conversation and it inspires presence because instead of finishing your food and then going off in your own directions, you might sit at the table and playfully, for us, we play gin rummy a lot. But if we were to start playing poker, because that is something I believe is really smart to teach kids, it's precisely for all the things we've already talked about. Because I think the characteristics that poker instills are things that are helpful to have in life. So if I were to now start to pivot sometimes playing poker, how do you recommend someone who's never really played poker start playing poker?
Um, yeah, I guess start by reading up on the rules. What hands beat what, and then you can just find basic strategies online. Like it's pretty simple. And then I would just have those at as a printout on the table so everyone can see to begin with. And then, sure, as you become more advanced, you can scratch those and start playing, for real, and then maybe discuss the strategies afterwards. I think that's very helpful, and that's something that I do with a lot of my friends and high level players. Like we talk about strategy quite openly because poker is a game where you play against other humans, right? Yeah, we learn from watching the computer play the computer, but that's not in reality. That's not the end goal. Like we're still gonna continue play versus humans, and humans learning how other people think is such a key aspect of the game, and not just in poker. Like I think in life as well. So I've had tremendous benefit of trying to like dissect and really getting into people's brains and understanding how they think. And it goes as far as like I can sit down at a table in Vegas playing versus someone I've never played before, but I know the type, I've seen this type before, so I know how he's gonna perceive this situation, and then I know how to counter that and to play against that strategy.
Interesting. So you've gotten really good at reading people then as well.
Yeah, you sort of kind of like group people into certain player types, and then you sort of know their approach to the game, and then you constantly updating that information and that process as you gathering more data, as you seeing everything is poker is all about information, right? So in the beginning, you have very little information if you're playing versus someone that you never played it with before. But the more you play, the more you see how they're acting, are they acting fast? Are they acting slow? You're normally acting fast, but now they're acting slow. Like that's a break in the pattern. So it's a lot about pattern recognition as well. So, but to understand pattern recognition, you need a baseline. So you need to know how this person normally acts. Um,
Mm.
so you're always looking for things that stick out that are deviating from this pattern recognition, and then ask yourself why. Like, why is he acting slow now? Is it because he's thinking about bluffing? Is it because he doesn't know how much to bet because he really wants to get paid by his really good hand? um, there's all different aspects.
Yeah. Oh, that's so fascinating. Well, so you have, as I mentioned, you have a program that people can do, correct? How would they get involved with that? Where do they go to find that?
Oh, I'll post a link in the show notes.
Excellent. And then, um, and how else can they? Is that the main way that people can kind of work with you?
I do private coaching as well, one-on-ones, which is something I really enjoy because then you really get to know the person, and I can sort of tailor uh, the the studying towards them specifically, because poker is quite unique in a way that like everyone has their own playing style, and it's quite important to like develop that and to take that into consideration. So it's not like a one size fits all. Like it's not that you can't just like take one strategy and implement that. Like you have to follow your own strategy, but then learn from other strategies and sort of implement that into your own game rather.
And is that kind of always changing, or do you find that once you lock into to your style of playing, that you kind of that's the um, piece that kind of continues onward, or do you find people are all like, is AI getting people to change their styles?
A little bit, yeah. Um, just because you can't get away with as much as you used to. People used to play like absolutely crazy back in the day. They used to play way too many hands. Um, and now you just can't do that because people are too savvy and they just gonna profit from you opening up that much. So I think as a whole, people are playing less hands, but they're playing them more aggressively, which is the biggest shift. So back in the day, people used to play more hands, but passive, meaning that they weren't putting as much money in the pot. They're just trying to small ball, it's called, like when you raise a lot of hands, try to take it down without risking too much. But nowadays, it's like people play less hands, but they play much more aggressively. So they're putting much more pressure on you. So if you really want to play a hand, you have to be willing to, put in money before the flop, on the turn, on the river if you want to see their hand.
Oh man, so you already speak it. See, I need to learn all these terms. Um, well, I have to imagine that you're learning all kinds of new pressures being a new dad as well. So hopefully those will translate to poker playing as well. Thank you so much for joining me, Martin. Where are you calling from right now? Where are you living these days?
I'm actually in Cape Town, so I've relocated down here.
Nice. How is that? I've always heard really great, like it's a beautiful area. Is that true?
It's amazing, man. It really has everything. The weather's great, and the best part is that they have summer when it's winter in the rest of the world. So it's coming towards the end of summer here now.
Oh, wow, and we're just barely at near the beginning here. Wow, nice. Well, I hope to see you again and see your beautiful new child, and I remember when I met you, I think you guys had just gotten married, I think.
Yeah. Yeah, in 2022, yeah.
Yeah, wow. Well, thank you again, and we'll put all your information in the show notes so people can find you on socials and they can find your program as well.
Nice,
And
man.
wishing you all the best. And thank you all for watching or listening. It's always a pleasure getting to share these guests with you. If you're enjoying everyone that's on the Everyday Ancestral podcast, please make sure you subscribe or share with others the show, because the more subscriptions we get, the more communication we are provided in how we're doing and how much further we can go. So thank you all and take care. Thank you so much for joining me on Everyday Ancestral. If you enjoyed this episode, hit subscribe so you don't miss the next one. You can find the show notes, links, and resources mentioned at eatpluck.com. That's EATPLUCK.com. And hey, if you know someone who'd get something out of this, share it with them too. Stay curious, live well, and keep it ancestral.